Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you can join us today for another deep dive into, well, basically the underlying mechanics of how we live, think, and operate.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, whether you're commuting, making dinner, or just taking a dedicated moment for your own, intellectual curiosity, we are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us.
Definitely.
Today, we have a mission that feels genuinely transformative,
Yeah.
especially for those of you who have spent years studying behavioral patterns and psychological frameworks.
It really is.
We are going to be unpacking a fascinating collection of source material today. And it's focused entirely on the hidden, subconscious forces that dictate our lives.
Which is a huge topic.
Huge. But we aren't just looking at the theoretical architecture of the mind. We are going to explore some surprisingly simple, practical tools provided in the text to actively rewrite our own mental programming.
Right, and it's a profound set of documents we're analyzing today, primarily because it strips away a lot of the clinical detachment we usually see in this field. What I appreciate about this material is how it demystifies complex, deeply entrenched personal issues. We're talking about the core theme that are seemingly intractable life problems, the cyclical conflicts, the financial ceilings we hit, the relationship patterns we just cannot seem to break. They aren't the result of random bad luck or immutable personality traits.
Right. It's not just, oh, I have bad luck.
Exactly. They are the strict result of outdated emotional programming. And the operational premise of the text is that this programming is entirely malleable. We can consciously intervene and change it.
That is just so empowering. And before we get into the granular details of how that intervention works, I want to give you a quick overview of our sources for this deep dive.
Sure.
So today's materials are completely anonymous.
Which is rare.
Very rare.
Yeah.
There are no names, no specific authors, and no academic institutions attached to these notes.
Zero.
What we have is pure, distilled insight from an incredibly deep well of psychological and emotional exploration.
It's just raw data, essentially.
Exactly. It's rare to get material like this, stripped of all the usual academic posturing, institutional bias, or self-promotion. It is just raw observation about human nature and the mechanics of the subconscious.
It is.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because this source material promises to reveal the single hidden reason behind almost every significant choice we make.
And it really does deliver on that promise.
It does. And the entire framework begins with a concept the text refers to as the magnet effect.
The magnet effect. It's a highly effective heuristic for conceptualizing what is happening beneath the surface of our conscious awareness.
Right.
The text suggests that our lives are governed by this internal magnetic pull, and it is entirely driven by emotional baselines we recorded very early in our childhood.
Like really early.
Yes. And when we hear the word magnet or attraction in self-help literature, it often veers into mystical territory. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Like cosmic forces and stuff.
Exactly. But this text keeps it strictly grounded in psychological mechanics.
Yeah, the source describes these early childhood emotions acting almost like radio frequencies.
That's a great way to put it.
You broadcast a specific frequency based on the emotional environment you absorbed when you were young, and that frequency constantly pulls similar situations into your present reality.
Yes.
Let's look at the mechanics behind this,
Yeah.
because it aligns heavily with what we know about the reticular activating system in the brain, right?
It does.
The brain filtering information to confirm existing beliefs.
Precisely. It isn't supernatural at all. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism.
Right.
The subconscious mind is fundamentally a prediction engine. It seeks the familiar because the familiar is, by definition, survivable.
Because you survived it once.
Exactly. If you survived a chaotic childhood, your brain categorizes chaos as a survivable environment.
Wow.
We are deeply habitual creatures, and our neural pathways are wired to recognize and gravitate toward patterns we already know.
So it's literally seeking out what it knows.
Yes. The brain will filter out opportunities for peace or success if those concepts are foreign, because the unknown is categorized as a potential threat.
That is wild. Let's ground this with this specific case study mentioned in the text.
The deception one.
Yes, the cycle of deception. The source details an individual whose entire life felt completely defined by being lied to.
A very painful cycle.
Extremely. They experienced betrayal in romantic relationships, they were misled by business partners, and even casual friendships seemed to end in deceit.
Right.
On paper, this person looked like the victim of statistically improbable bad luck. They felt cursed, as if they naturally attracted malicious people.
What's fascinating here is the standard cognitive response to a pattern like that.
Right. What do people usually do?
Well, they become hypervigilant, they try and consciously outsmart the liars, or they adopt a pervasive victim mentality.
Because they feel targeted.
Exactly. But the text asks us to look at the subconscious baseline. If this person internalized a profound feeling of inadequacy or invalidation in childhood,
Like maybe they constantly felt inferior to a sibling.
or their reality was constantly denied by caregivers,
Yes.
that buried feeling doesn't dissipate with age. It gets encoded. It becomes the structural foundation of their worldview.
So the feeling of inadequacy actually becomes the active magnet.
Precisely.
The conscious mind wants a healthy, honest relationship, but the subconscious mind is hunting for a dynamic that confirms the original childhood wound.
Because confirming the original wound feels safe to the primitive brain,
Even though it hurts.
even though it hurts. It acts as a powerful magnet by subtly directing the individual's attention and choices.
Right.
It might cause them to ignore red flags in a new partner, or to unconsciously provoke a reliable person until they withdraw or act out.
Wow.
The subconscious mind is terrified of moving forward into uncharted territory, such as a truly secure, honest relationship.
Because secure equals unknown.
Yes, so it actively creates, provokes, or simply remains blind to dynamics that hold the person back in the familiar territory of their childhood pain.
It's building its own trap.
It creates a self-fulfilling loop that proves to the person, see, you are inadequate, people do lie to you, it is not safe to trust.
It's a brilliant, albeit totally destructive self-preservation system.
It really is.
To make this structural reality very clear, I want to revisit a classic analogy and escalate it a bit.
Let's do it.
Let's compare the subconscious mind to a cybernetic system, specifically a thermostat in a house.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Most of us understand homeostasis, but applying it to emotional trauma loops is incredibly clarifying here.
Let's explore the cybernetics of that. A thermostat is designed to maintain a set point through negative feedback loops.
Exactly. So imagine the emotional thermostat in your internal house was set to inadequate or unsafe when you were 5 years old.
Okay.
Let's say that setting translates to a freezing 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It is profoundly uncomfortable. It causes shivering, distress, and a constant need to guard yourself.
Right.
But crucially, it is the established baseline setting.
It's what the system knows.
Yes. Now you grow into adulthood. Your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex, decides it wants warmth.
Naturally.
You try to bring warmth into your life. You open a window to let the beautiful sunshine in. You light a fire in the fireplace.
You're doing all the right things.
In real-world terms, you land a highly supportive job. You meet a wonderful, honest partner. You start achieving your goals.
But the internal thermostat is not programmed for warmth.
No.
It registers that the emotional temperature of your life is rising above 50 degrees.
It feels the heat.
It senses that the current environment is no longer matching its foundational programming. And in systemic family therapy or any study of homeostasis, the system's primary directive is to resist change and return to the baseline.
So the thermostat kicks on the air conditioning.
Exactly.
It blasts freezing air into the room to counteract the sunshine and the fire. It actively, aggressively works to bring the temperature back down to that freezing 50 degrees of inadequate.
It has to, mechanically speaking.
And in our lives, that air conditioning takes the form of subconscious self-sabotage.
Yes.
It is the sudden, inexplicable urge to pick a fight with that wonderful partner.
Or procrastinating on the major project that would secure your promotion.
Yes, it's suddenly deciding that your supportive friends are secretly judging you, so you isolate yourself.
Right.
The subconscious will constantly adjust the room's temperature to ensure it always feels cold, simply because that is the only climate it knows how to survive in.
And this operates entirely beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, which is why it feels so crazy-making to the individual.
You don't see the AC turning on.
Exactly. The conscious mind genuinely wants the warmth, but the subconscious machinery is rigorously enforcing the cold.
Wow.
It leaves you shivering, looking at the ashes of a ruined relationship or a blown opportunity, wondering why the fire went out.
That's haunting.
The text uses this magnet effect to show us that our external reality is very often just a delayed echo of our internal programming. The outer world is acting as a mirror to the inner setting.
This requires a moment of rigorous self-audit. I want you, the listener, to reflect on the persistent, frustrating patterns in your own life right now.
It's vital to do this.
The text is demanding that we stop looking at the external players and look at the script itself.
Yes.
Are you always the one doing all the heavy lifting in group projects or relationships, only to end up resentful?
Or do you constantly find yourself hitting a financial ceiling?
Right, experiencing a sudden, unexpected expense right when you thought you were getting ahead.
Always right at the finish line.
What recurring themes in your life might actually be magnets you aren't aware you are carrying?
Identifying the magnet is the critical first intervention.
You have to see it first.
When you name the pattern, it shifts from being an invisible force governing your life to an observable phenomenon.
Right.
You transition from being a passive victim of external circumstance to an active observer of your own internal cybernetic system. You realize the thermostat is broken, which is the prerequisite for fixing it.
But realizing your thermostat is broken is only half the battle.
True.
The real question and the true value of the source material we are examining today is how we actually go into the machinery and stop the subconscious from kicking the AC back on.
How do we rewire it?
Exactly. And the text makes a remarkably bold claim here. It emphasizes that all solutions are easy if we choose them.
Which sounds too good to be true at first.
It really does. It suggests that we don't necessarily need decades of unstructured rumination to fix this. We just need to do the targeted practical work of unearthing the roots.
Yes.
And it provides two highly specific, surprisingly physical methods for what it terms emotional discharge.
The focus on practical application in these documents is a welcome shift.
It really is.
It moves away from abstract theoretical analysis and right into the cognitive mechanics of change. The first method they detail deals specifically with utilizing the physical act of writing to break through deeply entrenched subconscious blocks.
Let's walk through the scenario the text uses to illustrate this because it deals with a highly common issue. Financial blocks.
Very common.
They detail a person who is engaging in a meditative practice, specifically attempting to focus on abundance and their finances.
Okay.
During this practice, they have a sudden, painful realization surface. They uncover a deep-seated belief that they fundamentally do not deserve money.
Which, from a sociological and psychological standpoint, is incredibly common.
We hear this all the time.
We inherit complex, multifaceted, and often contradictory narratives about wealth, morality, and worthiness from our early environments.
Definitely.
Scarcity mindsets are passed down generationally, often disguised as virtue or humility.
So when this individual uncovers this belief, this "I don't deserve money" thought, the prescribed solution in the text isn't to just try and outthink it or to paste positive affirmations over it.
No, affirmations won't work if the root is rotten.
The intervention is beautifully physical. It instructs the reader to take a physical pen and a piece of paper.
Old school.
Very. You write the word money at the very top of the page. And then you just start writing down every single negative thought, association, and fear you have regarding that word.
Unfiltered.
Completely unfiltered. The text stresses not editing yourself, not trying to be polite, logical, or spiritually enlightened about it. You just let the darkest, most irrational fears spill out onto the paper.
This is a classic, highly effective technique rooted in cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading. Let's dig into that.
Right, but with an emotional targeted focus. When we hold on to deeply limiting beliefs like, I don't deserve wealth, money corrupts, or if I am successful, my family will reject me, those beliefs require an immense amount of cognitive and emotional energy to maintain.
Because they're heavy.
Very heavy. They take up space in our working memory and sit in the background, acting as a hypervigilant filter for every financial decision we make.
Wow.
By taking a pen and physically writing those thoughts out, you are engaging different regions of the brain.
You're moving the data.
You are moving the information from the amygdala and the emotional centers, routing it through the motor cortex and the language processing centers, and externalizing it.
You are literally taking it out of your body and putting it into the physical world.
Exactly.
It forces a separation between the thinker and the thought.
Precisely. You are bypassing the conscious mind's usual defense mechanisms, which usually try to suppress these ugly thoughts before they fully form.
Right. We want to pretend we don't think those things.
But within minutes, this physical act opens what the text calls the subconscious gates. It allows those deeply held, usually hidden, limiting beliefs to literally spill out
onto the page.
Once they are on the paper, you are forced to look at them objectively. They cease to be nebulous, overwhelming feelings of dread. They become mere words on a page.
You can actually see them.
You can analyze them logically. And the text makes it clear this act of externalization serves as a profound emotional discharge.
It's like letting the pressure out of a valve.
Yes. But there is a crucial caveat here. The goal isn't just to write for 5 minutes and feel a little better.
Yeah.
The goal, according to the source, is to write continuously until you reach a completely neutral emotional baseline regarding that specific topic.
That requirement for absolute neutrality is the cornerstone of this method.
It's not easy.
No, the text acknowledges that you might not finish this process in a single sitting. It might take hours or several sessions over a few days.
You have to keep going.
You keep writing, keep dumping the subconscious debris onto the page until the emotional charge is entirely dissipated.
Right.
You write until you can look at the concept of money or whatever your block is without feeling that familiar knot in your stomach, the tightness in your chest, or the spike of anxiety.
You write until it's just a word.
The premise is that only then, once the internal space is completely cleared of the negative emotional charge, can you actually start paving the way to replace those patterns.
Makes perfect sense.
You cannot plant a new garden in soil that is choked with deeply rooted weeds. You have to pull the weeds completely out first.
It is a process of mental subtraction, which is often much more difficult than addition.
Definitely.
It is simple in its execution, but it is psychologically demanding because it requires you to intentionally confront the ugly, petty, or terrifying thoughts you usually expend vast amounts of energy trying to ignore.
It's confronting the shadow.
But once they're externalized, their neurological grip on your behavior is immensely diminished. They lose their power because they are no longer hidden.
So that outlines the power of cognitive offloading through the pen. But the source material also brings up a second technique.
Yes, the mental confrontation.
Which seems specifically tailored for dealing with more interpersonal historical wounds, like the deception example we explored earlier, where the wound is tied to a specific past event or person.
Right.
The text refers to this as the mental confrontation method.
This method is highly targeted and requires a specific internal environment. It operates on the principles of memory reconsolidation.
Memory reconsolidation.
Yes. It requires a quiet environment and a willingness to confront the traumatic memory very directly, not just conceptually, but viscerally.
Here is the exact process the source outlines. You go to a quiet place where you will not be disturbed.
A crucial first step.
You begin by taking 5 to 10 deep, intentionally calming breaths. The text explicitly states that this physiological reset is crucial to clear the mental fog and transition the brain out of its daily, low-grade fight-or-flight state.
You have to lower the heart rate.
Once you are centered, you address your brain. And the phrasing here is quite beautiful. The text describes the brain as a priceless device.
I like that framing.
You ask this priceless device a very specific, targeted question. Where did I first record this feeling?
The underlying assumption here is a profound trust in the brain's capacity for state-dependent recall.
Explain that a bit more.
The text treats the brain almost like a hyper-efficient, highly indexed search engine. When you clear the cache by regulating your breathing, you remove the clutter of your daily anxieties. Then you input a specific emotional query. Where did I first record this visceral feeling of being deceived and inadequate?
You ask the search engine.
The brain, functioning as this priceless device, will scan its archives and retrieve the exact foundational memory needed for healing.
Wow.
It might not surface instantaneously on the very first try, but the text assures us that the subconscious quickly learns what the conscious mind is asking it to do, provided the request is made from a state of calm focus rather than panic desperation.
And once that foundational memory surfaces, the active work begins.
This is the hard part.
The text instructs you to vividly visualize that original source of the pain. You don't just think about it. You place yourself back in the sensory experience of that memory.
You step into it.
You imagine the specific person who caused that initial wound. The parent, the sibling, the teacher standing right in front of you.
In your mind's eye.
And then entirely within the theater of your mind, you project all your anger, your frustration, your grief, and your suppressed emotions directly onto them.
You let it all out.
You say everything you couldn't say then. You let them have it.
This step is neurologically vital. What we are talking about here is retroactively completing a stress cycle.
Completing the cycle.
In trauma psychology, we understand that when we are young and we are hurt, frightened, or deceived, we rarely have the physical power, the social agency, or the vocabulary to express our anger, to fight back or to defend our boundaries.
We're just kids. We can't fight a towering adult.
Exactly. The physiological mobilization, the fight response is triggered, but it is thwarted. So we swallow it, we freeze.
It gets stuck.
The emotional and kinetic energy gets trapped in the nervous system. This mental confrontation technique allows you to retroactively unfreeze.
That's incredible.
It allows you to express that trapped mobilization energy safely. You are giving the inner child the voice and the agency they were denied in the actual event.
The source is also refreshingly realistic about the timeline of this specific practice. It stresses that this is absolutely not a one-time, instantaneous magic fix.
No, it's not a movie.
You do not just visualize yelling at your critical father once and wake up cured of your lifelong inadequacy magnet.
It takes repetition.
The text suggests repeating this mental confrontation daily. It notes that it might take 3, 5, or 10 dedicated sessions of doing this specific visualization until the emotion tied to that memory is fully neutralized.
Right?
You return to the memory and express the anger again and again, peeling back layers, until there is simply nothing left to say. You do it until the memory feels distant, factual, and emotionally flat.
You are deliberately exhausting the emotional charge attached to the synaptic connections of that specific memory.
Exhausting the charge.
By bringing the memory into working memory, pairing it with the intense emotional release, and then letting it reconsolidate, you are altering the emotional weight of the memory itself.
Changing how it's stored.
And when you finally free the brain from the massive daily background task of repressing that old pain, because repression requires constant energy, it is astonishing how much cognitive bandwidth and physical vitality you reclaim.
I can imagine.
It is akin to finally locating and closing a massive background application on your computer that has been draining the CPU and the battery for 30 years. Suddenly, the entire system runs faster and clearer.
Which brings us to a transition point in the text that I found to be one of the most challenging yet liberating sections of the entire deep dive.
It's a tough one.
Section 3 of our outline covers what the source material calls the illusion of selfless giving and the critical necessity of family boundaries.
This section is particularly provocative because it directly confronts and dismantles a lot of deeply ingrained societal conditioning.
Oh, yes.
And moral expectations regarding how we are supposed to behave, particularly within family structures. It challenges the inherent virtue of self-sacrifice.
The source introduces another highly relatable, compelling scenario. It details a person who is vibrating with intense, simmering anger and resentment because they do absolutely everything for their family.
The classic martyr dynamic?
They are the fixer, the caretaker, the one who constantly sacrifices their own time, their financial resources, and their emotional well-being to solve everyone else's problems.
Right.
And in return, they are met with selfishness, blindness, and a total lack of appreciation or reciprocity.
That's a one-way street.
They are exhausted, deeply resentful, and feel entirely taken advantage of by the very people they are trying to save.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, analyzing this through the lens of covert contracts and attachment theory reveals a very painful hidden dynamic.
A covert contract.
Yes. On the surface, to society and to themselves, this person looks like a martyr, a saint. They are the ultimate selfless giver.
Everyone praises them.
But beneath the surface, the source suggests that this chronic overgiving is actually a desperate, unconscious transaction.
A transaction.
The person is not giving freely. They are desperately trying to buy the love, the approval, the validation, and the secure attachment that they never received as a child.
That reframing is brutal, but illuminating.
It hurts to realize.
So the text is arguing that they aren't actually giving just for the sake of giving. The generosity is a strategy.
Exactly.
They are giving to extract something specific in return, something they have been starving for their entire lives.
Precisely. The unhealed inner child is still at the wheel, dictating adult relationships.
Wow.
That unhealed part of them is terrified of abandonment or rejection, so it adopts a strategy of extreme utility. It tries to make itself absolutely indispensable to the family system.
If I'm useful, you can't abandon me.
It operates on a flawed subconscious logic. If I do everything for them, if I am perfect, if I sacrifice all my own needs and become their savior, then they will incur an emotional debt.
They will owe me love.
They will finally have to love me. They will finally be forced to see my value and give me the approval I crave.
But it doesn't work.
But as the scenario shows, it never works that way. It inevitably breeds toxic resentment because this covert, unspoken contract is one-sided and is never fulfilled by the other party.
And the tragic irony is that the family members might not even realize this invisible contract exists.
Usually they don't.
They just see a person who's apparently always willing to do the heavy lifting, who never says no, and who seems to thrive on being needed.
They see a free resource.
So the family system adapts to that utility. They let the person do the work.
Why wouldn't they?
So what is the intervention here? The text is unequivocal. The solution is the rigorous implementation of boundaries.
Boundaries.
And the source explicitly acknowledges that for a chronic overgiver, this requires immense, almost terrifying courage.
It feels like jumping off a cliff.
It takes profound bravery to draw a line and stop the flow of resources when people, especially immediate family members, are draining you dry or are actively toxic to your well-being.
It requires immense courage because setting a boundary in an enmeshed family system almost always triggers an extinction burst.
An extinction burst.
The family system will push back, often aggressively, using guilt, shame, or accusations of selfishness to force the person back into their role as the caretaker.
How could you do this to us?
Exactly. Establishing boundaries goes against the grain of the dependent, imposed moral concepts we are taught by society. We are heavily conditioned by cultural narratives to believe that family is everything, that blood loyalty supersedes personal well-being,
That you never turn your back on family.
and that setting boundaries with a parent or a sibling is an unforgivable act of betrayal. We are pressured to constantly appease and please the family unit, usually at the total expense of our own mental, emotional, and even physical health.
And the source vehemently argues that breaking free from those imposed societal concepts is the only actual pathway to freedom.
It's the only way out.
It makes a vital distinction here.
Mm.
True freedom isn't necessarily about physical distance.
Right.
You don't have to pack up and move 3,000 miles away to be free of toxic family dynamics, though sometimes that helps.
Sometimes you need the space.
But true freedom is defined by the text as emotional independence. It is the ability to sit in the same room as a demanding family member and comfortably say no without spiraling into a debilitating cycle of guilt and self-recrimination.
It is the capacity to tolerate their disappointment without internalizing it as your failure.
That is powerful.
And the text notes a profound secondary effect. When you finally exhibit that courage, when you stop pouring all your vital energy into a black hole of seeking unachievable approval from people incapable of giving it, it leads to an incredible influx of new, positive possibilities in your life.
Because you suddenly have energy.
You suddenly have the cognitive bandwidth and the emotional energy to invest in relationships that are actually reciprocal.
Right.
You have the resources to pursue your own interest, to build your own life, rather than managing everyone else's. You shift your entire relational paradigm from a dynamic of anxious codependence to one of conscious, autonomous choice.
Which brings us to a critical juncture in our analysis today.
We're building to the main point.
We've discussed the magnets, the emotional baselines, the subconscious self-sabotage, the techniques for emotional discharge, and the hidden transactions behind overgiving.
We've covered a lot.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because everything we have unpacked so far serves as the foundation for what the text presents as its absolute core revelation.
The thesis statement.
It all funnels into one massive, paradigm-shifting insight about human motivation.
Yes, this is essentially the thesis statement around which the entire philosophy of the source material is built. It is the unifying theory for all the disparate behavioral patterns we have discussed.
The text states unequivocally that every single attitude we adopt, every major choice we make, every reactive pattern we exhibit, and every significant word we speak has one ultimate hidden driving reason.
And what is it?
We're constantly trying to please someone.
It is a startlingly absolute statement.
It really is.
At first glance, it feels almost overly deterministic. But when you truly analyze human behavior, specifically our irrational or self-destructive behaviors, through the psychological lens provided by this text, the assertion becomes incredibly difficult to refute.
I have to play devil's advocate here and challenge the source on this, because that is a massive, sweeping absolute.
Go for it.
Isn't it a bit reductive to say that every choice is about pleasing someone else? I chose to drink black coffee this morning instead of tea. I chose to pursue a career in media because I find it intellectually stimulating. Are we really saying that beneath my assumed autonomy, my daily hobbies, and my career trajectory are just me secretly trying to please my mother or my father?
It sounds absurd when you phrase it like that.
How does the text defend such an absolute deterministic claim against the concept of individual free will?
That is the necessary critical question. The text isn't necessarily referring to the micro decisions of daily life, like choosing coffee over tea, unless that choice is laden with some specific familial rebellion or compliance.
Okay, so not the coffee.
What the source is targeting are our macro patterns, our foundational attitudes towards success, failure, relationships, conflict, and self-worth.
The big stuff.
It argues that beneath our assumed conscious autonomy, the primitive brain is running the show. Even as high-functioning, independent adults, our primitive brain, which houses our deepest emotional conditioning and our earliest survival strategies, is constantly attempting to resolve the unresolved emotional conflicts of our past.
It's stuck in a loop.
Specifically, it is trapped in a loop, constantly trying to replace a missing childhood emotion by attempting to please, appease, or remain loyal to a specific figure from our past, most frequently, a primary caregiver or parent.
It is a matter of unconscious allegiance. Let's look closely at the case studies the source provides to defend this, because they illustrate the subconscious gymnastics of this loyalty perfectly.
They are very revealing.
First, the text presents the profile of the combative spouse. This describes a married man who is in a state of constant, exhausting friction with his partner.
A very common dynamic.
They argue endlessly about the same issues, taking the same rigid, combative stances. The man consciously feels like he is simply reacting rationally to his partner's unreasonable behavior. He feels justified in his anger.
But the text challenges him to look beneath the surface of the immediate argument. If he digs deep, if he uses that priceless device of his brain, clears the fog, and asks himself the difficult question, who am I actually trying to please right now by being so combative, so unyielding? He will likely uncover a startling, counterintuitive truth.
And what is that truth?
He isn't fighting his wife. He is unconsciously mimicking a dynamic to please his mother.
That requires some unpacking. On a logical level, how does destroying his marriage through constant fighting please his mother? That sounds completely paradoxical.
It is paradoxical to the logical prefrontal cortex, but it makes perfect sense to the primitive emotional brain.
Walk me through it.
For a young boy, the mother is the first and most powerful internal prototype for all future relationships with women. She sets the baseline. If his mother was highly critical, if she modeled a chaotic, high-conflict relationship dynamic with his father, or if the boy learned early on that the only way to get her attention and engagement was through conflict and arguing, his subconscious internalizes that exact dynamic as normal. It becomes his definition of connection.
So peace and harmony feel foreign and therefore unsafe. Conflicts feels like love.
Exactly. By recreating that exact flavor of conflict with his spouse, he is unconsciously keeping his mother's dynamic alive. He is remaining deeply, secretly loyal to the emotional environment she created.
He's recreating his childhood home.
He is, in a twisted, subconscious way, honoring her programming. To have a peaceful, loving marriage would be a rejection of the reality his mother taught him. It would mean abandoning her worldview. So he fights with his wife to remain aligned with his mother.
That is a staggering realization. It loops right back to the thermostat analogy. The conflict is the freezing 50 degrees that feels like home. The loyalty to the parent overrides the desire for a happy marriage. Now let's examine the second case study from the text, which explores a different angle of this hidden loyalty. The relationship saboteur.
I have a classic pattern.
This profiles a person who simply cannot maintain a long-term committed relationship. They always find a fatal flaw in their partner and run away, or they blow up the relationship right when true intimacy is building.
Or they chronically refuse to commit to marriage despite consciously claiming they desperately want to settle down.
Yes. On a conscious, cognitive level, this person is likely experiencing immense frustration and sorrow. They wonder why they are broken, why they keep self-sabotaging their own desires.
But the source asks us to look away from the current relationships and gaze back at their childhood environment.
Let's apply the text's framework. Say this person grew up with a profoundly unhappy, perhaps clinically depressed mother.
Okay.
A mother who was trapped in a miserable marriage, who constantly voiced her regrets, or who lived a life defined by suffering.
The child grows up marinating in that suffering. They watch it every single day.
And we have to understand the psychology of a child. A child, in their deep, egocentric, and desperate love for their primary caregiver, often takes on the emotional burden of that parent's happiness.
They think it's their job to fix it.
The child internalizes the environment and makes a subconscious vow. The child decides, it is my responsibility to make my mother happy. And if I cannot make her happy, I must at least suffer with her. I must share her burden. I must never abandon her in her sadness by being happy myself.
The child aligns with the mother's pain as an ultimate act of solidarity.
Yes, the suffering becomes the bond. And then the child grows into an adult. They leave home. They meet a wonderful, compatible partner.
You finally have a chance.
They have the genuine opportunity to be truly happy, to build a joyful, fulfilling marriage. But right as they approach that happiness, the primitive brain suddenly hits the emergency brake.
It sabotages everything.
Why? Because the deeply programmed subconscious views the act of being happy with a partner as a fundamental, unforgivable betrayal of their suffering mother.
It is framed as an act of treason.
The subconscious logic operates like this.
Huh.
If I allow myself to be happy, I am abandoning my mother. I am leaving her behind in her misery while I go off to enjoy my life. I am breaking the childhood vow of solidarity. I am being disloyal.
So, to please the mother, to maintain that deep, invisible loyalty to her suffering, the adult actively sabotages their own joy.
They blow it up.
They destroy the healthy relationship to return to their baseline of unhappiness, because unhappiness is the only way they know how to demonstrate loyalty to the parent. They sacrifice their own life on the altar of their parents' unhealed wounds.
That completely flips the script on how we view self-destructive behavior.
It changes everything.
It means our self-sabotage, our deepest failures, aren't happening because we are inherently broken or stupid or lack willpower. They are happening because we are misguidedly loyal.
We are intensely loyal.
We are still operating as frightened little kids, desperately trying to please a parent whose emotional needs we could never, ever actually fulfill. We are ruining our lives to honor ghosts.
It is a profound paradigm shift. Recognizing that self-sabotage is actually a misguided expression of love and loyalty removes a massive layer of shame from the process of healing.
Yes, the shame just dissolves.
But the text warns that until you do the work to make the unconscious conscious, until you rigorously identify who you are secretly trying to please with your failures, you will continue to flawlessly act out the tragic script they wrote for you.
This is the moment where theory has to meet practice. I really want you to pause whatever you are doing and let this sink in.
Reflect on this.
Think about your most frustrating, repetitive, self-destructive behavior. The pattern that drives you crazy, the wall you keep hitting, whether it is chronic procrastination, picking fights with people who love you, choosing unavailable partners, or shrinking away from major career opportunities.
Find that pattern.
Apply this framework right now. Ask yourself, with brutal honesty, who am I secretly trying to please by failing?
Whose approval am I still chasing by acting out this familiar dysfunction?
Whose emotional environment am I unconsciously trying to recreate?
Bringing that phantom director of your life out of the shadows and into the light of conscious awareness is the first absolute prerequisite step toward reclaiming your autonomy. You cannot fight an enemy you refuse to see.
Okay, so let's move into the logistics of the solution.
Let's look at the fix.
If we engage with this material, if we do the hard work to identify the hidden magnets, if we realize exactly who we are trying to please, and we start utilizing the physical tools, the pen to discharge the beliefs, the breath to locate the memories, the mental confrontation to release the trapped trauma, the very natural, highly practical question arises.
How long is this going to take?
Exactly. How long does it actually take? If we are talking about undoing decades of neurological programming and childhood trauma, are we staring down the barrel of 10 years of grueling daily effort before we see a change?
This is where the source material pivots from deep psychological excavation to highly encouraging practical neuroscience.
It's good news.
It provides a very specific timeline for this rewiring process, and it is significantly shorter and more manageable than most people would intuitively assume given the depth of the issues.
The text reveals that the timeline for functionally rewiring a single, deep-seated emotional block, dismantling one specific magnet, is a maximum of 20 to 21 days.
21 days.
And it requires only about 20 to 25 minutes of focused, dedicated work a day. When you put it in perspective, that is less time than most of us spend mindlessly scrolling through social media in a single morning.
The time frame of 21 days is not an arbitrary mystical number pulled out of thin air. What aligns so perfectly here is how this timeline corresponds with established neuroscientific observation regarding neuroplasticity, habit formation, and synaptic pruning.
It's science.
It is generally understood that it takes approximately 3 weeks of consistent daily intervention to begin fundamentally altering the neural pathways. You are literally engaging in Hebbian learning neurons that fire together, wire together, and those that are ignored begin to prune apart.
So you're building new roads in the brain.
Furthermore, the text touches on the deeper physiological changes, hinting at epigenetic implications. When you sustain a new emotional baseline, when you stop flooding your system with the cortisol and adrenaline of your old trauma loops, you actually begin to alter how your DNA is expressed.
Wow, at a cellular level.
You are creating a new physiological groove for your thoughts to travel down, changing the physical structure of your mind. But the absolute caveat is that it requires that consistent daily intervention. You have to put in those 20 to 25 minutes of actively challenging the old programming and installing the new every single day to force the brain to adapt.
The text heavily contrasts the necessity of this proactive, daily focused work with the absolute insidious danger of what it calls the victim mentality.
We have to talk about that.
This is a crucial concept to unpack. If we want to ensure that 21 days actually work, we have to address the profound danger of complaining.
Complaining is perhaps the most socially acceptable, yet personally destructive way we engage in self-sabotage.
Everyone does it.
It is insidious because it often feels like an emotional release, a way to vent pressure. But neurologically, it functions as a powerful reinforcement mechanism for the very reality you are trying to escape.
The source delivers a very stark, uncompromising warning about the trap of self-pity. It describes the common habit of wandering through life, reciting a litany of woes, saying things like, "Oh, my sorrowful heart, my bad luck. Why is my life so hard? Why does this always happen to me?"
It's a toxic mantra.
The text asserts that complaining is not just harmless venting. It is essentially giving a direct command to the mechanics of reality, or to your own reticular activating system, to multiply the misery and send it right back to you.
If we integrate this back into the earlier concepts of the text, complaining is the act of loudly, continuously broadcasting your inadequate or victim radio frequency.
You're turning up the volume on the magnet.
When you complain, you are consciously confirming to your deeply attentive subconscious mind that you are, in fact, helpless. And the subconscious, which is always eager to prove your core beliefs correct to maintain systemic homeostasis, will ensure you remain helpless.
It's like, you want to be helpless. I'll make you helpless.
It will calibrate your perception to filter out potential solutions, blind you to opportunities, and hyper-focus your attention solely on obstacles and threats. The victim mentality becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of the highest order, locked in by your own verbal affirmations of defeat.
This raises an important question.
Yes.
If the act of complaining is so neurologically and practically destructive, how do we actively shift our daily perspective? How do we arrest that downward spiral when things are genuinely difficult?
The source urges a radical, immediate shift in our internal and external dialogue. It instructs us that we must absolutely, unequivocally stop complaining about external factors.
No more blaming.
We have to sever the habit of externalizing the blame. Stop blaming the macroeconomy for your financial situation. Stop blaming your spouse for your unhappiness. Stop blaming your in-laws, your boss, your childhood, or even the weather.
The text argues that the moment you externalize the blame, you completely surrender your own power to change the situation.
And give it all away.
You declare yourself a passive object being acted upon, rather than an active subject capable of action.
It is a total abdication of agency. To counter this, the text instructs us to replace the complaint with a very specific action-oriented question, spoken out loud. What can I do right now for a better life?
What can I do right now? That's brilliant.
It is a phenomenal structural pivot in cognitive processing. Notice how it fundamentally changes the locus of control.
Yeah, it brings it inside.
Complaining places all the power outside of you. The economy is ruining my life, therefore I can do nothing. Asking, what can I do right now, forcibly brings all the power back into your sphere of influence.
It puts you back in the driver's seat.
It shocks the system out of the passive victim loop. It commands the priceless device of the brain to stop acting as a helpless recording device for misery and forces it to start acting as an active problem solver.
Even if the step is tiny.
Even if the answer is incredibly small, like I can drink a glass of water, I can write down my budget, or I can take 10 deep breaths, it reestablishes your agency.
Because if you leave the mind unguided, the text explicitly warns us, its default evolutionary setting is to dwell on negative past conditioning.
It goes straight to the gutter.
The unmanaged brain will naturally, inevitably drift toward fear, resentment, rumination, and anxiety because it is constantly scanning for threats.
That's its job.
And if left unchecked, that unguided, hypervigilant mind will ruin your relationships, it will degrade your physical health through chronic stress, and it will keep you perpetually stuck in the exact life you're trying to escape. We cannot passively hope for a better mindset.
Hope is not a strategy.
We must consciously, actively intervene. We have to grab the steering wheel every single day.
Let's extrapolate on this concept a bit further, because as the source nears its conclusion, it touches on something profoundly beautiful and optimistic regarding the fundamental nature of the human mind.
I love this part.
It refers to all of these conditioned fears, these limiting beliefs, and these destructive patterns we've discussed simply as trash emotions.
I find that phrasing so empowering. Trash emotions.
Yeah.
It removes the reverence we usually give our trauma.
It demystifies it completely. We often make the terrible identity-defining mistake of believing that our chronic anxieties, our conditioned fears, and our perceived limitations are integral parts of our true personality.
We fuse with them.
We say things like, I am just naturally an anxious person, or I am just a pessimist by nature, or I just have a bad temper, but the source insists that this identification is an illusion.
That's not who you are.
Those traits are not you. They are just trash emotions, learned behaviors, inherited fears from a frightened parent, and outdated survival programming that you accidentally adopted as your identity.
They are the heavy, restrictive armor we were forced to put on in childhood just to survive the environment. And we simply forgot to take the armor off when the war ended. We forgot we were wearing it and assumed it was our skin.
Precisely. And the profound, ultimate promise of this material is that when you engage in the work, when you start clearing away these trash emotions, using the tools of cognitive offloading, the breathing techniques, the rigorous boundary setting, and the 21 days of focused anti-victim intent, you do not become someone else.
You don't have to invent a new persona.
You do not have to artificially manufacture a new, better personality. Instead, you reveal who you actually were all along, underneath the programming. You uncover an innate, resilient inner wisdom that has always been there, merely buried under decades of subconscious debris.
It is a philosophy of subtraction, not addition. You aren't trying to build a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
You are simply doing the arduous work of unearthing the incredible, capable, autonomous version of you that is already there, waiting to be freed from the ghosts of the past.
Beautifully said.
We have covered immense, challenging ground today in this deep dive. We started by realizing that our suppressed, unexamined childhood emotions act as literal, powerful magnets, relentlessly pulling repetitive struggles and familiar pains into our present reality.
We covered a ton of ground.
We explored the cybernetic thermostat of the subconscious, which is always working behind the scenes to return us to our familiar, often painful baseline of suffering.
We examined the highly practical neuromechanic tools required to dismantle those very magnets. We discussed using the physical act of writing to bypass conscious defenses and drain the emotional charge from deeply entrenched limiting beliefs, and utilizing mental confrontation to safely retroactively complete stress cycles and neutralize old foundational wounds.
We face the incredibly hard truth about the illusion of selfless giving, recognizing that constantly overextending ourselves is very often just a desperate, covert transaction, a plea for the childhood love and secure attachment we missed.
A huge realization for many.
We learned that establishing rigorous family boundaries takes profound courage, triggers intense pushback, but is the only true path to emotional independence and genuine freedom. And then we uncovered the core paradigm-shifting revelation that beneath almost every major choice we make, our primitive brain is secretly trying to fulfill a vow of loyalty by pleasing or mimicking a figure from our past.
And finally, we saw that rewiring this complex matrix of trauma and habit isn't a lifelong, impossible sentence. It takes 21 days of dedicated, focused neuroplastic intervention. But it strictly requires us to drop the victim mentality, to refuse the urge to multiply our misery through complaining, and to continuously actively ask, what can I do right now?
It's in our hands.
The brain is a priceless, adaptable tool meant to serve us, to solve our present problems, and to navigate our unfolding reality. It was never meant to rule us with the outdated fears of our past. You, as the conscious operator, hold the definitive power to rewire the subconscious machine.
I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over, inspired by the depth of everything we have unpacked today. If the deeply held fears, the chronic resentments, and the perceived limitations that dictate your life today are just trash emotions, inherited scripts from someone else's past that you accidentally memorized, Who will you discover you actually are once you finally have the courage to throw that trash away?
A question worth answering.
Thank you so much for investing your time and joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, do the work, and we will see you next time.